Oh, look, Ronisha, you're gonna have a good time tonight. She says she heard of parts work before, but never had someone explain it. So yeah, that's what I will do. And I will also help you work through it, and help you kind of talk to your parts. So this is a good one. I've done this one before, though this is a better version of it just because I've been honing it a lot over the last couple months. So if you have seen it before, uh, hopefully this will be better. Let me know if it is or it isn't. Uh, Barbara, if you look at um, your Zoom bar, and if you don't see the Q&A option there, then if you click on more, the to the right, there's a circle with three dots. If you click on that, you should see the Q&A feature, and then you can click on that and it'll open it up for you. And then that way everybody can just ask any questions that they want. And Barbara, good at following instructions, apparently says, okay. So excellent. Um, I will answer questions. Sometimes I will answer them right away. A lot of times I will save them to the end. But that doesn't mean don't ask them. Definitely ask them. I will not get off this call. I will not get off this workshop. I will not end the workshop until I answer everybody's questions. So don't worry if you feel like I'm not getting to it. I will get to it. It's important to me. Um, oh, Mary Beth says, she is IFS savvy, but she likes my workshops. Well, that's great. Now I feel a lot of pressure to impress her, which, I will do my best. You'll let me know how this compares to what you already know about IFS. Um, okay, so it's 7:07. I usually like to start at 7:05, but I'm apparently giddy and a little goofy. And so, yeah, we're just going to have fun tonight and see where this takes us. Okay, I'm not looking at the chat anymore. Uh, this is Healing from Trauma by Working with Your Parts. It's an intro to IFS, which is Internal Family Systems. I will explain all of that in a moment. Again, submit your questions via the Q&A feature. Again, if you don't know where that is, look at the Zoom bar. If you don't see it on the Zoom bar, click on the More option and go to Q&A, and you can open it up that way. Again, please don't use the Q&A for conversation because I do actually look at the Q&A, so that will be very distracting. But if you have questions, post them there, and then I will get to them. If you want to use the chat during the workshop, go right ahead. I know there are a bunch of people that are really kind and supportive to each other on that, which I really love. And so go right ahead. Just understand I won't be looking at it again because if I get distracted, I won't be able to focus, and then this will be pretty ugly, and I don't want that. I will send everybody the recording and the slide deck that I'll show you tomorrow, usually in the morning, but definitely by 12. If you don't get it, just reach out to me on Meetup or email me. You'll have my email address by the end of this. And then you've already done it, but introduce yourself in the chat, share where in the world you're coming from, because that always tickles me plenty. Okay, let's go. I want you to understand, particularly for someone like Mary Beth, I'm not going to teach you everything you need to know about internal family systems because that's not my goal. My goal is to teach you what you need to know about IFS. Again, IFS is internal family systems. I'm going to teach you what you need to know about IFS in order for you to be able to use it in your daily life. That's the key for me and my workshops, and I'll get to that right now, actually. So I'm Jeremy Schneider. I run a company called Build on Your Strengths. My whole purpose is to help people recognize when the past is running their present and build new ways to respond when it shows up. So these workshops are really focused on the way I think about kind of a mental health portfolio. So I want to teach practical tools and skills that expands your portfolio of care and healing so you have what you need when you need it. the thing is, we need different things at different moments. And my goal in teaching these workshops is giving you a few things every time we meet. And then you take them and you try them, and some are going to work and some are not going to work. And then come back to another workshop and we'll keep doing this. And I'll talk a little bit more about other workshops, new workshops that I'm doing for 2026, which hopefully will be of interest to you. I'm a social worker, I'm a family therapist, I'm a certified coach. I've written a book called Fatherhood in 40-Minute Snapshots. It's available on Amazon if you want to take a look. I've finished my memoir in my rearview mirror, and I'm aiming to publish it. I don't want to give a specific month, but probably the spring. That's the goal. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. I do workshops like this every week, pretty much, and have already kind of set up the first 8 for next year. So I'm excited about that. That's what I've been doing the last week. Um, and then I also have a Psychology Today column on AI and mental health. If that is something that is of interest to you, I will share that tomorrow in the list of links that I share with you, including the recording and the slide deck. I have this is going to be so much fun tonight. My brain is just like slightly off. So I have 3 free guides that I call the Mental Health Starter Pack. I'll tell you more about those later, but if you want to take a look, you certainly can. And they're free. So let's get to the good stuff, and maybe that'll help my brain focus a little bit better. So originally, there's something called family systems theory, which is actually, again, what my first master's is in. That was developed to really help us understand the organization, structure, and complexity of familial relationships, but more importantly, how they impact the individual. Up until that point, most of therapy had been focused on the individual as if they were unaffected by the world around them. That was obviously not true. Certainly, there are a lot of things that happen within us, but we are profoundly impacted by our families, as I'm sure all of you understand. Richard Schwartz came along, and he, through working with clients, started coming up with this idea of internal family systems. And for him, he started doing internal family systems not because he really felt like he felt like he created it. He felt like he was hearing people talk about it and built that theory from it, which is where I think it's really interesting. And it really is just the whole idea that when we say things like a part does this or a part of me feels this way, right? It's because in reality, there are a series of parts inside of us. And so instead of there being a family system that is around us, internal family systems is focused on the idea that there's an internal family system within us. A person is a system of different parts, all operating under the leadership of our core self. So we have parts that hold anger or pain or try to protect us or try to help us avoid feelings or whatever it is. We've got lots of different parts probably inside of us. And the goal of IFS, and this is really important, it's not to get rid of these parts. These parts are not bad. The goal is to help us create a connection with our parts and so that our self is in charge and that they learn to trust us, trust ourself. When I say self, I'm trying to put a capital S on it. They learn to trust ourself so that they can feel safer and less like they need to jump in and and protect us. The other thing that I really like about this uh, approach is it's it really opens up the possibility for reparenting ourselves. And what I really like about that is this is our chance to give us what we never had. Many of us grew up missing something or getting something we shouldn't have and not getting what we needed. And I think we've spent so much of our lives still kind of hoping that someone else is going to do that for us. And what this approach is, and again, why I like it so much, is it allows us to do that for ourselves. We can be what we've been looking for. I'll talk more about that, but to me, that's like the reason enough to really pay attention to IFS. So the idea behind IFS is that we have a self, this core sense of who we are. And our self, who we are, was always good. There's always enough. And that's beautiful. The reason we don't feel that way is because we have parts that don't feel that way. Because whatever we went through growing up or in adulthood has piled on top of our self so that we don't hear it anymore. But we're all good. We're all enough. We don't need to be anything more than what we are. We just need to heal more. So when you think about it, self is everything good about you, which also means that anything unpleasant, anything negative, anything that doesn't feel good is probably because of a part. Our self knows what we need. The way I kind of think about it is our self has the compass to get us where we need to go. We just need to learn to listen. And particularly for those of us that have really been traumatized, that is a challenge because we've been listening to these parts for so long. But that doesn't mean the self isn't there and we don't have it. It's there. We do have it. It's just we got to get used to paying attention to it and being connected to it. So, to that end, what I want you to do is just take a brief moment and think about a time where you felt genuinely yourself. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One, so when I was a kid, even as an adult, when I play sports, I just feel like whole in a way that I never did. I feel integrated in a way that I never did. When I walk in nature, particularly when I'm seeing some beautiful bird or something, like I am so in the present, I'm so in the moment, I'm so relaxed and at peace that that's me, that's self. When I do these workshops, honestly, like I love doing this. This is why I do them. I feel most like me, even today, a bit giddy, but I definitely, this is me, right? This is who I am. I don't, I don't need to put something on to do this because this is me. This is what I love. So if you can find something similar to that, a time in your life, a moment, an experience you had where you felt that way, right? Where you had that sense of being whole or integrated or at peace or whatever it is, that's probably what it feels like when your self is in charge. And anytime you feel something negative, something unpleasant, something upsetting, disturbing, etc., that's a part that is taken over. So IFS goes into 5 Ps of self. So I just as a deeper way of understanding the qualities that your self has, there's presence, right? The ability to be present, to be connected to yourself, observing and being aware of what you're experiencing, but without judgment or reactivity, right? That's kind of the goal of our life, right? Patience, trusting that healing and internal shifts take time and allowing processes to unfold naturally. Understanding that we can wait. Sometimes it's okay to wait. Perspective, seeing the bigger picture, understanding how our different parts contribute to the whole system of who we are, persistence, just continuing to do the work, even though there are rough days or rough stretches. We just keep moving forward. And playfulness, a lighthearted approach to self-exploration, using our creativity, feeling joy. So those are a kind of a deeper understanding of self based on the IFS model. A lot of people wonder where parts come from or how they're created. So they're created from trauma. A couple of things happen that make this challenging for us. One, the way that I like to think about it is we're born kind of this whole self, and then stuff starts happening to us. We get hurt, we get traumatized in whatever ways that that happens. And in order to protect our core sense of self, a part breaks off to absorb whatever that is. So, a good example of that is if we're being hurt at a young age, we don't have a language for that. We don't have an ability to express ourselves, right? We don't even understand what's happening. That could easily consume and overwhelm us. But what happens is a part breaks off and essentially absorbs all of that pain and holds on to it. And essentially what's happening is that this protects the self. Okay, so I'm going to interrupt what I'm doing because someone asked a good question. How is this different from dissociative identity disorder, which is what multiple personality disorder is now called? It's very different. Multiple personality disorder, or DID, is an extreme version of this, where they're not just different parts, they're entirely separate entities, identities that often don't even know each other. What we're talking about here are parts still within our sense of self that we can communicate with and help and support and care for. I hope that helps. Is IFS a lesser level and true for everyone? Yes. I think everybody has parts. Again, this is the IFS model, but also what I think. I think everybody has parts. Some people don't have as many parts. Some people don't have parts that are as hurt or damaged. But none of us grows up in a world free from suffering. And so we often have parts that are created. It's just the level, as you're saying, like, is it the level of it that involves the um, severity, so to speak, right? So I was saying that these parts break off, and but the problem is, let's say I'm I was 5 years old, something started to happen to me, right? A part breaks off. That part remains 5 years old. They're stuck in time. They don't age as we do. The other thing is we have this thing called the amygdala in the back of our brain, and that's where our like fight or fight, fight or flight or freeze fawn. I'm just going to say fight or flight because that's a mouthful. That's where our fight or flight mode gets activated, right? Our amygdala has no sense of time. And that's because, when we saw a tiger back in the, before you and I were born, when we saw a tiger, we didn't need to know, oh, we saw a tiger a year ago and we need to move. We just went, Oh, that's a tiger, go, right? It doesn't process time. So when we experience trauma, we're stuck in that time. Just so that's what these parts end up doing. And it becomes our job, unfortunately, to help bring those parts to the present, to help train our brain that we're in December 2025. And I'm actually going to give you some examples of this as we go along. The other thing that they're doing is this, say this 5-year-old part, right, that is trying to hold on to this pain for me. If something happens now in my life where that is painful, that part is going to try and take over and protect me because that's what it does. Except it's 5 years old. It has no idea what to do, this poor guy, right? It doesn't realize that I'm not 5 years old anymore. I'm a wee bit, since we have someone from Scotland, wee bit older than 5. And I can handle it, but it doesn't know that. And so you've got the fragmentation that happens. You've got this fact that it's frozen in time, and the fact that it's trying to protect you from something that happened long ago, but it's still doing it even though you don't need it to anymore. So all of what we'll be focusing on is how to help these parts understand you can handle this. The thing about trauma is that it knocks us off our normal child development path. That's the real problem with it. And so we get stuck in these places, and things that maybe should have happened didn't happen, or they happen later. There are kind of three ways that we think about trauma. There's the big T trauma, which is kind of the more stereotypical stuff, right? Abuse, violence, catastrophic loss. The small T trauma, the way that I kind of think about it is that if if your mom was mean to you once and apologized and was like and was like, really, I didn't mean that, I'm gonna not do that again, and doesn't do it again, that moment may have hurt, but it's not traumatic. If your mom insults you every day or several times a week, and she does that for years, that's going to be pretty significant trauma. And the difference is there. It's kind of like the way I think about it. If it's just once or twice, it's probably not that big of a deal. It like hurts, but it's not traumatic. But if it's done repeatedly over time, that really does knock us off our developmental path. Another way of thinking about it, in case this helps, and if it doesn't help, then just forget what I'm gonna say. But it's like if someone hit me in the arm, it would be like, ow, okay. But if someone hit me in the arm 3 times a week for 5 years, that's gonna hurt. I'm gonna have a bruise, if not something more significant. And so just kind of like if it's just once or twice, it's not too bad. But if it happens repeatedly, that's more of what I think about in this area. Adversity is the things, particularly the things that we don't have control over, that happens in our life or in society, such as poverty, discrimination, chronic stress, health issues. And obviously, I'm not saying we have control over these other two. I'm just saying these are the things that happen to us on a more societal level. And I'm not saying all of this because I think it's really important for you to consider yourself a victim, because I don't think that that's necessarily helpful. But I do think it's important to understand what happened to you, because the more you understand what happened to you, the better you're able to be compassionate with yourself for the fact that it affects you today. And that's really the goal. I talk a lot about self-awareness and self-compassion. I think understanding this makes it easier for us to be compassionate with ourselves. So as I mentioned, they get part live in the past. They're frozen in time. They have an outdated perception of who we are, right? So even though I'm 54, my younger parts constantly think that they have to still protect me and take over situations like they did when I was a kid. But they're not doing that to hurt me. They're not even doing that because they think I suck or something. They're doing it because that's that was their job. Their job was to protect us at a time where we couldn't be protected, where no one else was maybe protecting us. And when you start to see like what what they're trying to do, I think it becomes easier to look at them with compassion. And I'll touch on this a little bit more as well. So what happens when our fight or flight gets activated? Again, this part of our amygdala, is this warning system goes off. Our parts sprint to protect us. So a panic part tries to preempt danger. A pleaser part tries to prevent conflict. A avoider part tries to minimize overwhelm, tries to distract us from our feelings. A critic tries to prevent us from hearing criticism from others. So it criticizes us first, hoping that it could get us to avoid that from someone else. Every behavior, every part that we have is protective, is doing something for us. They're playing a role. The frustrating part, right, is we don't necessarily want them to. And sometimes what they do stands in the way of what we actually want to do. So we're not nice to them, or we're not nice to ourselves about it. And again, what I really want to focus on is the goal of IFS is to create, they say the word harmony, but create connection between yourself and your parts so that they don't need to jump and protect you. You can actually have a conversation and discussion about it and figure out what they need and how you can help them. And again, that's going back to like the the way we needed to be treated but weren't treated, right? What we needed as kids in terms of love and affection and caring and warmth that we may not have gotten. Uh, Amanda asks if there are more parts in the subconscious than the conscious. I think yes, I think they're mostly in the unconscious or subconscious, and that what we're trying to do with our self-awareness is to essentially turn that volume up so we can hear them better and interact with them better. This is like my favorite metaphor. Many of you who've been to my workshops before know I'm a metaphor guy. This is one of my all-time favorites. I'd love to take credit for this, but I can't because I didn't come up with it. This is an IFS thing. The way to help think about parts is think of yourself as driving a bus. You're driving a bus, all your parts are sitting in the back. They're there, they're chilling out. Maybe they're reading, they're looking out the window, they're chatting with each other, they're having a fine old time. And everything is going well. You're just going forward. Something goes wrong, there's a detour, right? There's a small issue. They don't really worry about it. You can handle that. You keep going, you pull up maps and you find your new route around the detour. Great. But when a trigger happens, and a trigger could also be something really small, but when a trigger happens, then it's chaos in the bus. It's just absolute chaos. A part will literally just like jump up, pull us out of the seat, and start taking over and driving. And I don't know how much you know about kids. I know you won once. you know, maybe you've had kids, but they're not really good at driving. So driving a bus, bad situation, just right off the bat, right? The other thing is, it's really hard to be an adult. It's hard to be an adult as an adult. It's even harder to be an adult as a kid. And so when this, just to use myself as an example, and I will try to use myself as an example so you can get like a clearer picture of it. So when I used to have a boss, thankfully I don't anymore, but when I used to have a boss, every time I would get called into their office, I would start to freak out and a part would try to take over. Usually it's a 9-year-old part. And I had enough trouble as an adult handling my boss, but certainly at 9, I couldn't handle my boss at all and didn't always say the right or best things. When I feel 9 in this world, I start to feel overwhelmed. And I start to think things like, I can't do this. I can't handle this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And often I will start to feel like I need to cry because it's so overwhelming. And that's how I know that a part is taking over. Because I'm 54 years old. I've done a heck of a lot of work on my life. I literally teach this stuff because it's so important to me. I could probably handle a boss. But when I was growing up, conflict with authority figures like parents, other people, were terrifying because I was always getting hurt. And so this part is just trying to protect me from that. It doesn't know that it's December 2025 and I'm 54 years old. I hope that sort of helps to understand how that, like a visual way of thinking about parts. I just, like, one question I'll ask myself is like, who's driving the bus today? Because if it's not me, then I probably need to figure out what's going on. So on that front, think about how you know when parts start to take over, when they start driving the bus. I gave a couple examples, but I think it's really good to really spell these out. So when you have reactions that feel bigger than the current situation. So I'll give you an example. I've been trying to, or I had been trying to get I recently moved from New York to Florida. I was trying to get my car registered and I was having some trouble because just like getting all of the information together. And I was so upset about it. I was just like, I couldn't believe that I wasn't going to be able to do it or handle it or anything. And again, I mean, I moved down here just fine. I can probably switch my registration, right? I realized that was a part, and that part was tied to helplessness. There's just this belief that there's nothing I can do. Because again, when I was a kid, there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do to make that stop. But I'm not a kid anymore. It doesn't know, he doesn't know that. But he still acts like it. And so we had a good little chat. And then I figured it out and I got my registration taken care of. Feeling like a child in adult situations, I would assume, even though it's dangerous to assume, as you know, that most of you have had this feeling. You're in some adult conversation, whether it's conflict, whether it's just dealing with a boss, or whether it's dealing with a partner or something, and you're feeling like a child and you're trying to act like an adult, but you're feeling like a child. That's a part taking over. Some people have really physiological responses, such as like when we panic or like tension in our stomach or we shut down or hyper alertness or vigilance, right? These body responses, that's also a sign that a part has taken over. When we have that harsh inner critic, that's probably a part. When we feel this intense shame, that's a part, right? A self wouldn't talk to ourselves like that. When you feel yourself kind of on autopilot, that's probably a sign that a part has taken over. And when you have sudden mood shifts, sometimes I notice this, particularly like when I'm out in nature. So I'm so fully attuned to myself. And then I'll have some thought. I won't even realize what the thought is. And my mood starts to go down real quick. That's a part has taken over. It's not like I all of a sudden got depressed. Nothing changed. I'm still fine. Everything is great. It's beautiful out there. But I had something that triggered it. And this part was like, oh, I got to take over. And so that's what happens. Again, I just want to emphasize how important it is to understand that the self is always good, always positive, always healthy. It's always looking out for the best for ourselves. So anything that feels negative or unpleasant or unhealthy, that's a part and is a sign that that's we need to have a conversation. I think the whole idea of parts, once you start to become aware of it, is really an incredible opportunity for healing. So the three things that you really need to know in terms of being able to do this is self-awareness, right? You need to start being able to notice when a part takes over. And that's why I went through those examples, right? We need to understand when a part takes over so that we can then realize, oh, okay, I got it. A part is taken over. Now I need to figure out what to do next. I'm actually going to walk you through some very specific examples of that. We need to approach our parts with curiosity, not judgment. In fact, that's a real good rule of thumb. Anytime that you become aware of something, approach it with curiosity and not with judgment. And then again, I'm going to emphasize the importance of self-compassion, treating ourselves and our parts the way we treat someone we love. And again, if you've heard me do a workshop before, I think about it as like, if my kids came to me upset, would I say whatever it is that this inner critic just said? No, I would not. So I've really, I'm not perfect at it, of course, but I've learned over time to really talk to myself and my parts the same way that I would talk to my kids. Because again, the goal isn't to get rid of your parts, it's to help them feel safe and secure and connected so that they let self lead. So, a few reminders. I like, I think the whole idea of this is now, not back then is something that you might want to say over and over again. So, one of the ways that I do that, and again, this is just what I do, you can do this any way you want, is I remind myself of the month and year and how old I am. It is December 2025, and I'm 54 years old. Because my part thinks that it's 1980 and we're 9 years old. So that, and this will take a lot of repetition, right? This is not the kind of thing that like we say it a couple times and everybody feels better. Remember, they've had years, if not decades, of thinking that it was that they're the age they're at. It's not going to take decades, but it is going to take some time to help them realize they're in the present. Another thing that's really good to do is to help your parts understand what you've achieved so far in your life. And I don't mean like career-wise per se, but I mean like I raised two good kids. I raised two kids. We'll see if they're good. I have done a lot of work on myself. I'm doing something that I'm really passionate about. 9-year-old me can't possibly fathom that, right? 9-year-old me never saw that as my future. 9-year-old me wanted that, but never imagined that it would be real. So, some way of saying, hey, I've made a lot of progress. I've done a lot of things. I've achieved things in my life that we probably never imagined when we were kids. And again, that doesn't mean your life has to be perfect or you have to be successful in everything that you do. Just the chances of you being better prepared to deal with life than you were when you were a kid are pretty high. Just even that is a good start. Something simple like I've handled things like this before and I can do it again. We always want to ask parts what they need. What do you need from me right now? How can I help you? And hear what happens. Hear what they say. I'll tell you, I'm sure some of you are thinking, like, what do you mean they talk back? I had a great therapist who introduced me to IFS, and I was not a believer, and but I truly respected her, and so I was like, okay, I'll try it because I trust her. And the first time she had me ask a part how they were doing, and I got a response. And then she had me ask another part, something, and I got a response that I don't remember ever thinking before. I was convinced. And it happens quite a bit. Parts will say things to me that I don't remember thinking. But when they say it, it makes perfect sense. So it's just a simple, what do you need from me right now? How can I help you? The challenging part can be that there are sometimes more parts involved at one time than just one, right? So you may have a couple or three different parts. So even once you deal with one part, you might need to deal with another part. You just do your best, right? This is going to take some practice. It's going to take a little time, but it's just this kind of constant checking in process. So I want to give you an example of kind of like what a dialogue might look like. So for me, it's that who's driving the bus question. What part of me is activated right now? That's the self-awareness. What part of me is activated? Where am I feeling this? What is, what feels off or different? Something doesn't feel quite right. What's going on? And then getting curious. Once you realize it's a part, what are you afraid of? Again, what do you need from me? How old do you feel? And they might respond, and they might not, but often they will respond. You'll hear some response. So Steph just asked, how am I getting these responses? It's hard to explain. To me, it just feels like I pose the question in my head and an answer comes. It feels just like a thought. It's just it it has a different feeling to it. It doesn't feel like it's coming from self. It feels like it's coming from something that's a little bit different. I understand that maybe some of you might be more concerned about my sanity than you were when we started. I'm okay with that. I just realized the time, and I must be going very slowly because it's 7:50. So if you need to leave at 8, do your thing. I'm just going to keep going, and then I'll still get to the questions afterwards. Um, and then once you start this conversation with your part, you want to keep offering it warmth and assurance. You want to reparent it, essentially. You're safe now. I'm here to protect you. I'm grown now. I can handle this. I can take care of us now. You don't have to worry about this anymore. That is something that I say a lot to my parts. You don't have to worry about this. You did your time. You got us through something no one should have to deal with. I got us now. I can handle this. And then we want to anchor ourselves in the present reality because what can happen is that we get, when parts take over, right, we end up feeling like we're in the past. So we need to make sure that we're doing something that brings us back to the present. That's partly the reminder of your current age, your year, your experience, your knowledge, achievements, whatever works for you to help kind of ground you back in the present as yourself. Sorry about that. So let's walk through some really specific tools that you can use. One of them is reframing by using a part of me. We're just trying to label it essentially and put a little perspective on what we're talking about. So, an example is instead of saying, I am anxious about this meeting, you can say, a part of me feels anxious about this meeting, which means part of me is totally fine about this meeting. So, all of a sudden, it's like, I'm anxious about this meeting feels like, oh my goodness. But a part of me is anxious about this meeting means, okay, there's someone that needs some support, but I'm still doing fine. And then you can just try to help. So what's happening? What are you anxious about? What are you worried about? What are you afraid might happen? How can I help reassure you that we're going to be okay? I've had this meeting 732 times. It's never gone terribly. We'll get through it one way or the other. Just that reassurance, just that comfort, and not uh, judgmental, not condescending, not like just deal with it or just come on, right? Like we're gonna do that, but we're gonna try not to do that just because that's we don't want to talk to ourselves like that or any part of ourselves like that. IFS talks about blending. So when, the idea of when a part takes over the bus, takes over driving the bus, it's essentially become blended with ourself. So we want to create some space to unblend so that we can be ourself again and then be able to help the part. So the way to start doing that is awareness, of course, because the awareness is the beginning of everything, certainly everything good. And so once you have some sense of awareness, you begin to realize, okay, this is a part. How can I help this part? What does this part need from me? So an example is I notice this angry part is taking the lead. I'm going to take a breath, separate a little so I can hear it more clearly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about grounding in a few moments and give you some grounding exercises that you can use as well. For many people, they feel parts in their body, they'll feel reactions in their body. And so, one of the things is being more connected to our bodies and, and to find out where the part might be and how we can address it. So, you could do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. But you can ask, where do I feel this part in my body? And so for instance, I will get, I'll feel anxiety in my stomach, right? So I'll feel a part anxious in my stomach, or I'll feel like a wired, jittery feeling in my legs, But some people feel it in their shoulders or their neck or their head, wherever that tension is, or they'll feel their heart racing. Those are all signs of parts. And trying to talk to it as if it's a part will help you be able to connect with it better. I touched on this earlier, but it's important to understand the role the part is playing. So, just as an example, and you don't, IFS has particular categories for parts, which I didn't go into. You can name your parts whatever you want. Um, there are some people that are very particular about like writing down their parts and naming them all and kind of giving a mini description of them. If you feel comfortable doing that, go right ahead. If you don't, that's okay too. The whole idea is to just be able to make this easier for you to communicate with your parts and build this relationship. So, a part that focuses on perfectionism might say something like, I'm scared you'll be judged if you don't perform flawlessly, right? Probably because when we were growing up, that's what happened. Something like an avoider might say, I'm protecting you from feeling the grief you couldn't handle as a child. This is a really powerful one because we couldn't handle it as a child. And like being able to put our feelings aside and avoid them was a survival mechanism. It's one of the things that helped us to survive whatever we went through growing up. But it doesn't help us now. And this is a good example of a part that is still trying to protect us in a way that it can't do anymore, but it did at one point. Um, Sorry, Jenny just asked, it seemed like parts stem from childhood in a lot of cases. If you've blocked out some of your childhood or don't remember a lot of it for whatever the reason, how do you figure out where the parts are coming from? How do you fix the parts if you don't know which parts are broken or you don't know where they come from? If that makes sense. Okay, so Jenny, the first thing I'm going to say, and this is partly semantics, but it's really important. You're not broken. Your parts are not broken. There is nothing broken about you. You may have been taught to believe that you're broken, but you're not, right? Our self, who we are, doesn't break. We're ridiculously strong. We may get knocked down, we may get deeply hurt, but we don't break. We're just often taught to believe that we have, which is kind of criminal. So you don't need to fix anything. These parts don't need fixing. They're not broken. They need caring, they need affection, they need healing. And if you don't remember certain things about your childhood, if you don't necessarily know all of the parts that are inside you, that's fine, right? If you need to know that, that'll come. What I would suggest is just focus on whatever part you are able to identify. And if it's just one for now, that's fine. Building that connection, helping it understand that it doesn't need to take over, that's going to help change your life at least a little bit. And I'm talking about parts as if they stem from childhood, absolutely. And traditionally, and that's because most of my trauma was as a child, so that's where all of that happened. But it can happen as an adult. So you could have something traumatic happen as an adult and have parts develop from that. Tracy asks a good question. I'm gonna hold that one though, because that might be a long answer. But we'll get back to that, Tracy, I promise. Creating gentle internal boundaries, right? So sometimes we don't always have time to sit and talk to our part and make sure they're okay, and right? And so think about what would you do with a friend, or what would you do with a partner, or what would you do with a child who comes to you at a particularly bad moment? You're just walking into a meeting, or you've got a deadline in an hour and you still have so much to do. You're not going to tell them to go to hell. You're going to say, hey, I hear you. I can't give you the attention that you deserve right now. And what I'm going to do, I need to get this done. But at this time, when I'm finished, then we can sit and talk about it. And that way, if you're having to deal with something, you can just say, hey, look, I hear you. I got you. Trust me enough to handle this for the next hour, and then we can sit and figure this out. Again, you're building a relationship, but you're also building a sense of trust. They can come to you and they know that you're going to help and protect them and take care of them, and you're not going to just ignore them or throw them away or anything like that. Again, some of you who know me already know that I like journaling. You can do journaling as a self-depart kind of communication. And again, you can do this however you feel comfortable. If you want to do this writing, if you want to do this typing, if you want to do this through art, through other creative expression, go right ahead. Right? There are no rules here except that we just want to explore and connect with these parts. Sometimes, though, before we can actually help the parts, we need to ground ourselves because whatever's been activated, whatever part has taken over, has done so strongly that we kind of lost our connection to the present. And so we may feel overwhelmed, we may feel panicked, whatever it may be. And at that moment, trying to talk to our part may be really difficult. We may not even be aware a part has taken over. We need just enough awareness to sort of realize something has gotten out of control. And then we need to do some grounding exercises. So, grounding helps reset our timeline, right? It brings us back to the present versus the past, which may be where our brain is at. It sends a safety signal to our nervous system that we're good, that we're safe, that we're here, and we can handle this. And it helps ourself build more leadership. When our self keeps handling life well, our parts start to realize, oh, you kind of got this. I, maybe I maybe I can retire. That's how I think about it with my parts. Uh, to be honest, is I offer them retirement, but in a good way. I'm moving down to Florida and I'm going to spend life at the beach in the pool and walking in nature, which is, oh wait, like my life right now. Um, so like that's what I offer them as like, hey, you did a great job. You don't need to work anymore. And it's just a way of kind of helping them to think about like letting go. You're retiring. You put in your time, you did your work, you did a great job. Take a well-deserved break. So let's go over a couple of grounding practices. I'm really conscious of the time. I I know when I practiced this, it was a lot shorter than this, so I'm really uh, talking a lot tonight. So I apologize, but let's look at a couple grounding practices. There's only a few more slides that I can go through pretty quickly, and then we'll get to the questions that I haven't gotten to. So there are three types of grounding practices here. One is 5/7 breathing, which, as with all of these, pretty much everything I tell you, there isn't a right way to do it. It's just the process of doing it that matters. So 5/7 breathing, if you can't inhale for 5 breaths and exhale for 7 breaths, then do 4-6 or 3-5 or 2-4 or whatever you want. The idea is you need to exhale longer than you inhale because when our amygdala kicks off that fight or flight reflex, we start taking in breaths and we breathe really fast and we're trying to oxygenate our blood and we get all those chemicals going, right? The breathing, exhaling longer than we inhale tells our nervous system, oh, right, okay, we're good. Everything's fine now. Activating your senses, you do not need to do, this is usually called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do this any way you want to do this. The quote unquote standard way is 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 you feel, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. But if you just want to do 5 things you see, or you want to do 10 things you see, it doesn't matter. The goal is by activating your senses, by sitting and looking around, that's a water bottle, that's a monitor, that's a speaker, that's a phone stand. I'm focusing on my physical surroundings, and that helps my brain slow down and grounds myself to the present. Palms together is a fun one. You can push your palms, you can put your fingers together, you can press your palms together, you can rub your palms together and create some heat, and then like put it on your face if you want. There's lots of different options. Again, it's all about grounding yourself. If there's something else that you do that already helps you ground yourself physically, that's great too. Um, I'm really torn. I feel badly about this. Normally, we would do one of these together, but I am really conscious of time. So we're going to move forward with this. If you really want to do it, let me know and we'll come back to it. I want to give you an example of kind of how all of this kind of works together with parts. So I worked for a job for like 23 years, and it was an environment that wasn't great, but was particularly suited to my special triggers. And so it was really difficult for me. I I never left. Even though there were times I was absolutely miserable. I never left. I couldn't leave. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm done. I want to start this business. I want to move. I want to start this next phase of my life. And my protector part was this fierce, loyal, built around survival. Its phrase was endure. Endure no matter the cost. And its perspective was we can't quit. That's not allowed. We have to keep going. And you could see, like, that's a really powerful part. And to get me through my childhood, I needed that. Otherwise, what if I gave up? What if I didn't try to survive? This part kept me going. And when I started to think about it from that perspective, the compassion, the warmth I felt for him, right? Like he did everything he could to get me through this. The thing is, he's still trying to do everything he could to get me through it. It's just I didn't need it anymore. It's not like he was doing something wrong. I just, I don't need him the way I did back then. I had this powerless part that remembered how powerless I felt being a kid. There's nothing I can do. There were these people hurting me, and there was nothing I could do. And if I ever tried to do something to get out of it, it just made things worse. And it had this belief of like, no, it's not our choice. We don't get to decide. And of course, that makes sense. But myself, I was ready. I knew it was time. And this took a few weeks and a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. This was a very hard experience, but I ended up having these conversations about like, thank you for helping me endure. I see how hard you've worked to keep me from failing or being powerless again. And I had this other part that was like, leaving feels like betrayal, like I'm weak, like they win. And I was able to say, like, but what if this isn't about them and me? What if this isn't an us thing? What if it's just a me thing? What if it's what's good for me? What if I actually get to decide that? What if we don't have to fight anymore? And so I had these conversations and then I quit. And uh, I I'm so happy. I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. And I'm in a position where I get to spend my Thursday night with you. Couple more slides. We're just about done. So, what I want to recommend are some check-ins, especially if you really want to give this a shot. Just try two or three check-ins every day. You don't, again, this isn't not like this isn't an assignment. This isn't like don't feel badly if you don't do it 3 times a day or whatever it is. Like this is just try what you can, do what you can. That's fine. So there's a morning practice, daily reminders, and an evening practice. So, morning practice, who needs my attention today? I told you the way I do this is who's driving the bus? Because I just need to check in on who's driving the bus. I have spent too much of my life with someone else, not myself, driving the bus. I want to make sure I'm driving the bus. And then what do I do at that point? If someone else is driving the bus, I need to have a conversation, check in with them. How are they doing? What can I do? So on and so forth. Maybe understand what triggered that to happen. The evening practice is more of like, so what parts took over today? What were they trying to protect me from? What do they need from me now? And how can I help myself more next time? Again, this is not about I suck. I have to be better, but more about, okay, so I had some challenges today with this. Is there a way that I can get prepare better? Was this a new kind of trigger that I hadn't been aware of before? Is there something I can bring with me or write down that makes it easier for me to remember? Again, it's not about criticism, it's about how can I make this easier for myself? And then these daily reminders, you could think of them as like affirmations or whatever you want to do, but these are the things that you want to try and do a few times a day. I actually, when I was really in the midst of this, I set these up as calendar appointments on my phone. And so they just pop up, and they still do actually. They pop up on my phone at, whatever time I set them. And sometimes I miss them, but oftentimes I'll see it and I'll just be able to like, oh, right, it's December 2025. I'm 54 years old, or whatever it happens to be. So the three things I want you to kind of remember are one, the date and time, right? Your age, a gratitude to your parts for what they've done, right? You may take a little bit of time to figure that out, but as you understand that, like I wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for my parts. And that's extraordinary. And I will forever be grateful for them for that. And then what your life is like now, which is the kind of like how far you've come, the things that you've dealt with, the challenging situations that you handled, just to help remind your parts that like, yeah, I got this. I can do this. I can handle this. I'm good at this now. When you start thinking about doing these things, start slow. Start with one technique, one of the things we talked about, build gradually, trust the process. It's not going to be like a miracle thing that you do for a few days and everything is better. It's going to take some time, but that's okay. And it's part of that healing process, right? you've essentially been struggling with this for a really long time. It'll be nice even just to start to feel like you're making a shift, even if you don't feel the shift just yet. Again, the goal of IFS is to embrace your whole self. It's understanding that every part of you has value and together they make you whole. And you probably wouldn't have made it as far as you have without the parts that developed. And now it's our responsibility to care for them and appreciate them for what they did. Okay, so that's the end of the workshop. Let me run through this stuff. I want to tell you a few things. So I've got workshops scheduled already for the beginning of 2026. Not next week, 2 weeks, I'm doing my last workshop of the year, Handle Your Feelings During the Holidays, Tools for Emotional Management. And then I've got two workshops in the beginning of January. And then I have two new workshops that I'm going to be doing every month. At least that's the goal. I'm going to try to have two workshops where they're like this kind of picking a topic, picking a theory, and how can you apply it to your own life. So that's two. The third one, I have as I mentioned, my memoir In My Rearview Mirror is coming out early next year. I was thinking that it would be an interesting angle if I talked a little bit about a moment from the book, and then we use that as a real world example of dealing with loss or challenges or growth or healing or whatever it happens to be. So those are going to be structured a little bit differently. I'll probably read a little bit. I don't mean like 15, 20 minutes, but like I'll read a few minutes from my book and then we'll talk about kind of that experience, what I was going through, and then still get to some practical things that you can use. But it'll just be from a different perspective, and I'm really curious as to what you think about that. The fourth workshop every month is new, and it's actually not really a workshop, it's more of a group. And I think particularly the ones who have been through some of my workshops, I think this might be really helpful for you. And that's at least that's the goal. Um, so unfortunately, I made a mistake and it says free, and I'm going to tell you it's not free. But it's only $7. And the reason I'm charging for this is I'm thinking of this as I'll have three workshops a month. And but if you're attending one or two workshops, which that's awesome, thank you, you're going to try to do some of this stuff, and you're going to have challenges. And there's a difference between like being able to ask a question or two and maybe hearing about how other people are doing it and paying for a full coaching session, which obviously you're welcome to do. But I felt like there needed to be a little bit more of an in between, right? So this is a group where I'm not going to have a slide deck. I'm not going to have a presentation. We'll talk about the workshops that were done that month or any workshop that I've done in the past. And you'll bring up questions, you'll show examples. I tried it this way, it didn't work. What can I do? And we'll just talk, right? It will be set up as a meeting in Zoom, so we'll all be able to see each other. So it'll be a little bit more um, welcoming, I think, for everybody. And so the reason I'm charging $7 is $7 seems like a small amount of money, but probably enough that will help keep the group small. I don't think having 100 and whatever it was today, 25 people or whatever show up will be as helpful. So it it's a small amount of money. If that's an issue and you really want to attend, just reach out to me and we'll figure something out. Okay. Hopefully that helps. I'll be sending some more information about these as well, but I figured I just wanted to give you the preview. I do workshops like these for organizations. So if you think your organization would be interested in one of these kinds of workshops, please let me know. I would love to help. There are ways to connect with me. The three free mental health guides. Oh, just I have a Facebook group if you might want to join, and I also have a Facebook page. And then if you want to read articles that I've done, you can check on LinkedIn or Substack. That's all free. This is all free. Free mental health guides. So there's the self-care guide, there's the self-awareness guide, and there's the mindfulness meditation guide. Up to you if you'd like them. If you want to do this kind of work a little bit more in depth, and thinking about coaching, you can schedule a free call with me. It'll be like a mini session. We'll talk. I will not even let you schedule with me if you wanted to. I will ask you to think about it. I will send you an email, and then it's up to you. So there's no pressure, I promise. And hopefully you get the sense from me that I'm not real good with the pressure stuff anyway. It's just not my thing. So that I also have a strength, what I call BYS Strength Studio, Build on Your Strength Studio. And for December, there's a discount code called Healing. And there are all of my previous workshops, as well as workbooks that I've created and bundles that I've created together with workshops and workbooks and articles. So if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to check out. And the 25% off is everything. It's not just one thing. You can buy the whole place out and get 25% off. Individual coaching, I talked about. And then this is just me. So that's that. And great. So let's look at questions. I fell behind. So let me just look at some questions. And if there was anything from the chat, and I point to the chat because the chat is over here. If there's anything from the chat that you think I should answer or address, maybe copy and paste it over into the Q&A. Um, oh, Mary Beth, I just saw your comment. Thank you. That was very sweet. Um, so, Tracy, you've got a few questions. Excellent. That's why I like you. Uh, I think I answered your question about what part of our brain holds on to trauma. That's the amygdala part. That's the lizard brain. That was the um, the more primal part of our brain. Part of the challenge is all of our nerves, right, travel up through the back of our neck. So it goes through the amygdala. That's why when we have triggers, we don't think. It's not because we're stupid or because we can't do it right. It's because it goes through our amygdala before it ever reaches our prefrontal cortex, where we do all that logical, rational thinking. That's what makes them so hard to deal with. So it's not you, it's the fact that of the way our brain was set up. It's just that we're often getting triggered by things that aren't life-threatening, but feel life-threatening. Tracy, you asked about brain spotting. I'm afraid I don't know what that is. So if you want to follow up, please go ahead. Um, right, Tracy. So do our parts from childhood ever heal? Do our childhood trauma ever heal? This is a tricky question, obviously. I am going to say no, but so no, I don't think trauma necessarily heals. I think it's a wound that stays with us. What we do have some control over is how it affects us. And so much of what I teach, right? Most of my workshops are about overcoming trauma in some way. What I believe very strongly, and there is really good research to support this, which is nice when that happens, when I believe something and there's research to support it. It's very depressing when it's the opposite. Um, and the research is that we don't necessarily have to uncover every single traumatic thing that happened to us, but we do need to understand what happened to us enough to see how it impacts us in the present. From my perspective, healing is not about never being impacted by trauma, because I don't think that's possible. At least depending on the severity of the trauma that you've experienced. I'll never be free of trauma. And I don't mean that in a negative, depressing, hopeless way. It's a reality. But I changed the way it impacts me. I change how affects my present. And that's what I believe people can do. And that to me is the real key towards improving your life on a day-to-day basis. It's not necessarily dredging up your past. It's understanding how your past impacts your present and then learning skills that you can use to improve that experience. So I hope that helped. Brian asks, I have a part that comes on like a person I dislike who hurt me in the past. It disparages everything I love and care about. Does this sound like an inner critic trying to protect itself from verbal abuse? So there are a couple of theories about this, Ryan. I think, unfortunately, we do tend to internalize the people that hurt us, particularly if they were close to us. That doesn't mean that we hate ourselves or anything like that, but we we do internalize because that's what we learned. It's that same idea. Like if someone just knocks me in the arm once, okay, but if someone knocks me on the arm 4 times a week for 5 years, I'm gonna have a serious bruise. It's gonna hurt like a lot. And I'm gonna have learned that that's how you treat people or that's how you deal with things. And so maybe when I get upset about something, I'm gonna hit myself because that's as kids, that's how we learn, right? It's all we know. That's not a that's not a you problem, right? That's a just that's the way our brains work. If you can think of this part as a part and build something of a relationship with this part, not thinking about it in terms of this person that you don't like, but in terms of a part of you that's reacting to what happened to you, it might be easier for you to build that relationship and to start to help it see that it doesn't need to do that to protect you from that happening. I hope that made sense. I'm not entirely sure if it did. So if it didn't, feel free to follow up. Does everyone have dialogue in their brain? Because I don't feel like I have much dialogue, but I do feel feelings very intensely sometimes. So does everyone have dialogue? Okay, this is a tough question because uh, I think the answer is no. Not everybody has dialogue in their brain. I have dialogue all the time. My brain has layers and layers of thoughts, which is one of the reasons why I am almost always listening to music. I got my Spotify Wrapped today. I listened to 118,000 minutes of music on Spotify. That doesn't count what I listen to on Apple Music. So if that gives you some sense, I am listening to music all the time because it helps quiet my brain a little bit. It doesn't really matter so much as to whether you have a dialogue going on in your brain, or some people think of it as like a running commentary. I have a running commentary. Um, and oftentimes this is what it sounds like. But so it doesn't really matter whether you have that or not, or what degree you have it, except that you just want to be able to understand how to manage your brain. And so to that end, if an actual dialogue with parts is maybe not helpful, you can focus on feelings since you feel feelings more intensely, right? You can really focus more on like how do you feel about this? And you might feel their reaction instead of like hearing their thoughts. You can also try creative expression, right? Art, collages, drawing, painting, music, whatever, whatever works for you. I hope that helps. Someone said friends and family can cite events. Oh, cite events at specific years in their past. My internal calendar is almost non-existent. My points of reference are by location, military Brad, and only family knows what I'm talking about in reference to personal history. I'm even poor in associating which grades I was in. A story in the past might begin with when we were in New York, and my family might know what age that pertains to. Strangers have no idea whether I was 6 or 26. Um, yeah, I mean, I would think that that's because you were moving around so much, that the way that your brain marked those memories is differently than for people who lived in the same place all along. And so what really changed were the grades. For you, it wasn't the grades, it was the places. So I, I think that makes sense. I can imagine it's frustrating to explain to other people, but I'm not sure I don't think it's a bad thing. Someone else said, what if the parts say they require accountability and justice for those who hurt you or hurt us in order to move forward? Okay, so they're saying I can accept apology isn't going to happen. I can accept the pain damage they cause, but I can't escape the suffering, which is the obsession of also needing to see accountability and justice. How do I acquiesce to those parts' needs if I can't provide it to the self? Okay, so there's a lot going on here. Let me break a couple things out. First off, I just have a pet peeve that I'm going to talk about because you brought it up. Forgiveness. There are a lot of people, including a lot of therapists, that believe the only way for you to move forward is for you to forgive the people that hurt you. This might not come as a surprise to you, but I am not one of those people. I was hurt by several different people. I have not forgiven any of them. I have no intention of doing so. I am not holding a grudge against them. I have, I mean, I'm angry, but I've processed a lot of my anger. I've processed a lot of my pain and loss. I will never have a relationship with those people. I don't, I I get it if you need some sense of closure, which I needed, and I figured out a way to do that without the people involved. But I don't think you need to forgive people. I think you need to process your feelings about it and how it impacts you. But what you owe is to yourself. If forgiving is going to help you, go right ahead. But if you're not interested in that, then don't worry about it. Just keep working on yourself. The you talked about, sorry, I'm just reading this again just to make sure that accountability and justice, I think that's like code for how unfair this is. It's totally unfair. What we went through, there's nothing fair about it. Whatever we turn our lives into, we still shouldn't have had to go through that. A lack of justice, a lack of accountability does make it feel like it's worse. But I think that's really just our way of trying to control a situation that we can't control. we can't get someone else to be accountable. The people that hurt me don't, they've certainly never apologized. There's no accountability. And that sucks. There was no real justice for them. That sucks. But what I need to deal with is how unfair that makes me feel. The loss that I feel for having missed out on a childhood that every kid deserves. And that's, I think, where you can deal with your part. I don't think your part is asking for accountability and justice. I think your part is screaming about the unfairness of what happened to you. And I think you can understand that and be completely compassionate with it. So someone said, what is the evening practice? Actually, let me just go back to that real quick so you can see it on the screen. Okay. Nope. Well, there we go. Okay, so I've put the daily check-ins back on the screen, so you can see the evening practice. Someone asked about the morning check-in. Who needs my attention today? Do you mean how can I help other people? Or no, I don't care about other people. Just kidding. Of course I care about other people. But I'm really talking about parts. I don't mean how you can help other people. I mean, who's driving your bus? Right? Who's running the show today? Whatever phraseology works for you, right? Sometimes it's like, I like who's driving the bus. Sometimes I also like who's running the show. Who, come on, who's, because I don't seem to be running the show today. Who's running the show? But it's just all like whatever is comfortable for you in terms of having this discussion. Yes. Okay. Do you have a list or guide with grounding techniques we can use when we're in the middle of a situation where a part has taken over and you're trying not to cry and embarrass yourself? Okay, Sally, first of all, genius idea. I'm embarrassed I hadn't thought about it. I'm going to be covering some of this in my next workshop, the one in 2 weeks, about emotional management. So that, again, that's also free. So you might want to attend that. And I mean, I know that there's tons of stuff out there. You know what? Tomorrow, I will try to include a link with some grounding, other grounding techniques. Um, and then Callie asks, how do IFS parts factor into neurodiverse individuals? Um, so that's a good question. I don't necessarily think I know the answer to that. Excuse me. I'm going to assume, however, that, sorry, I forgot to drink. I'm going to assume that, and again, because there's no hard or fast rules here, you kind of want to customize this to whatever works for you. So if thinking about a part of you that has ADHD, right, that kind of represents ADHD, if being able to think about that and talk to that and converse with that and build a relationship with that part helps you in thinking about like what do you need to do to take care of yourself when certain symptoms arise and other symptoms arise, etc. Right? If that's helpful, then definitely I would go for it. If it's not helpful, then don't worry about it. I think the parts I concept can be really helpful in just so many different ways of dealing with difficult aspects of ourselves. Because when we think about them as parts that came from a place of trying to protect us and save us from something that was really terrible, they mean well. And they probably really helped us. So Tracy is talking about, um, I'm sorry, Tracy. So Tracy's talking about never feeling like she's good enough and this nasty inner critic. And yes, it sounds like we have similar wounds. I will say, when you start thinking about that it's not you that isn't good enough, but that it's a part that feels that you're not good enough, it all of a sudden starts to feel a little bit different because you are good enough. I'm not. I'm not trying to be, like an inspirational speaker, right? Like you are good enough. That is, we're all born good enough. It's just that's the way our life is. We're all born good enough. Crap happens to us, and somehow we learn that we're not. That doesn't mean that we're not. We just learn that we're not. So you are good enough. I'm good enough. Everybody here is good enough. But you've got parts that really believe that you're not good enough. And they need to be cared for. And they need to be reminded that they are good enough and that we're all good enough, especially together. That's another thing that I do a lot with my parts is I talk about how we're not alone. When I was a kid, I was always alone. But we're not alone now. We're together. Um, just I never really knew how to bring this into the workshop itself, but since we're here and hanging out, and there's probably just not many of us left. Oh, there's still like 60 of us here. Um, one thing I did was there's a way of thinking about your parts in terms of giving them a home. I'm not really good at, uh, I can't remember what it's called, which is, I think, ironic, but there's a term for when you can't picture things in your brain. I can't picture things in my brain really well. I certainly can't really create things in my brain. But when I was starting to do this IFS work, one of the things that I realized was I wanted to be able to, like, when I found a new part, I wanted to be able to kind of bring it into the community that I was building, this new family of mine, right? So I did a couple things. One, I imagined us in a circle on the beach. So when I need to talk to all of my parts together, we're just on the beach because that's like our place. And we're just sitting there and we'll have a conversation. The other thing I did was because I can't picture things like I was saying, I actually asked AI to make me a beach house, like just create a photo of a beach house with like incredible views and these amazing internal rooms, like stuff I could never imagine. And so at night at 10:30, I have a calendar reminder that says, we're all in the beach house together. No one is alone. And it's funny because it's been there for a while, but I've been really noticing it the last few days because I guess probably because I'm working on this. And it's just such a pleasant reminder. It's like, yeah, we are all together and it's better together. It was it was rough when we were all apart. So I think that's another way of kind of thinking about it as well. Like there's for those of you that are creative, there are so many creative ways to play with this to help yourself feel more connected, together, united, etc. Uh, oh, Jenny, thank you. Jenny says the first person that she's heard who says we don't need to forgive. Yeah, I'm with you, Jenny. We don't need to forgive. It's the concern I have, and this is not about you. The concern I have with some people who don't want to forgive is the intention behind that, right? There's like a punishment aspect of it, or there's a like a revenge aspect behind it, or it's that they're still holding so much of this anger and pain that they can't forgive. we still need to do the work, but the work and the healing, if that person isn't involved in our life, we don't have to deal with that person. Even if they are involved in our life, we don't have to deal with that person. We don't have to forgive that person. One of the things, not to like spoil things, but one of the workshops that I'll be doing for In My Rearview Mirror for my memoir will be um, cutoff, like family cutoffs, like when family members cut us off, and kind of the loss to deal with that and what's involved there. Sorry, Christy says, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD from childhood trauma. I always feel like I don't exist. Obviously, I know I do, but it's hard to find parts of me that I can pull out to deal with. First of all, I'm sorry, Christy. I totally understand how hard that is. And just even the part, even the fact that you say, I always feel like I don't exist, that's a part, right? There's a part of you that feels unseen, that feels like you don't matter. That's not you, right? That's not yourself. But yeah, you go through a difficult childhood, we're gonna think we don't really mean anything to anybody, or we're gonna feel like we're a burden. So my guess is, Christy, that you probably hear parts, but just aren't aware of them because it's essentially like you're thinking about a new language. And so take some practice. And what might be interesting for you, Christy, is to write out some of these thoughts that you have, because maybe writing it out, because this is how I write, writing it out, you'll be able to then read it over and go, oh, look, I say that I don't exist. Oh, I mean, that must be a part. Oh, I feel this way. Oh, that must be a part, right? It might help you get that a little bit of that distance, like the labeling that we talked about, and then be able to review it that way. Just a thought. Callie asks, when bad things happen to us, is part of the forgiveness also with ourselves? Maybe that is something we can work with. So I guess if you're thinking about, I guess I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I'm going to assume that you mean bad things happen to us and we feel like we had some responsibility in that and that we should forgive ourselves for that. And if that's what you mean, I absolutely agree. What happened to us was not our fault. One could make an argument that it's not even their fault in the sense of that they were doing what they were taught. They probably had something like that happen to them. Like people don't usually just start being abusive, they learn it. And it takes enormous effort and courage and strength and work, etc., to stop the traditions of abuse in our families. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, let me know. We are at 8:50. I believe this is officially the longest workshop I have ever done. So thank you very much. If you have more questions, I'm not going anywhere. If you don't, I really hope you liked this. This is a bit of a heavier one than I normally do, but I think it's going to have a chance to really help you. And if you need help doing that, reach out to me, let me know, set up a call, whatever it is. Um, yeah, otherwise, have a great weekend. And thank you so much for joining. Check out my other workshops, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.